Well, everybody, that was a fantastic conversation about AI and a whole host of other conversation. And it's nice to have wicked smart people talking about important matters and working to make the public sector smarter about how to work with the private sector. So that was fantastic. We've got to have another great conversation. I'm really honored and thrilled to have Dr. Lau of NASA joining us. We're going to have a conversation about NASA and some of the great important things it's doing, the aspirational, most sort of aggressive and ambitious projects they're working on. So I hope you enjoy this.
Dr. Lau, it's so fantastic to be together with you again. I think the last time we were together was at one of the Artemis launches, and it's great to be back together. But for those in our audience that aren't familiar with some of your background, tell us a little bit about your journey and your career and becoming one of the key leaders at NASA.
Hey, Sam, it is so awesome to see you again. Yes, absolutely. Artemis launch was the highlight of the decade for us. And if you see my back, there's the SLS rocket that launched an Orion capsule. And in 2024, we will actually be having people on it. And then soon after that, we will be launching, returning US astronauts from US soil to the moon. Just so excited. So to your question, I'm a nuclear engineer by training, but a policy wonk by practice. My motto in life and work is in God we trust, all others bring data. And I've lived by that credo my whole professional life. Before I came to NASA, I worked at a federally funded research and development center that supported executive branch agencies, including the White House. And I helped making decisions around things we do in space. It was a lot of fun. And over the last decade, I have had a chance to weigh in on almost every major civil space policy coming out of the White House. I came to NASA as a political appointee and led the transition of the agency in the Biden administration in the first 100 days. Once we had an administrator and a deputy, I transitioned to my current role, which is to advise leadership on issues related to technology, policy, and strategy in a holistic way. So, usually you kind of see these silos, but, what we are trying to do at NASA is trying to look at it holistically. And I also lead an office that helps NASA to think in those terms. So an example of this kind of holistic thinking is, I just mentioned we will be launching missions to the moon in the coming decade. Well, it turns out we are not the only country launching missions to the moon. The China would, other countries as well, private entities. So what does that mean? Between now and 2026, there's more than 20 missions going to the moon, and not just anywhere on the moon, most likely the lunar South Pole. And even within the lunar South, there's only a handful of sites that are actually really interesting. So everybody's going to want to be there. And, we can't prevent others, right? I mean, the Outer Space Treaty reminds us that the moon doesn't belong to any one country and we have to share. So how do we do that? What happens when multiple missions run by multiple entities from multiple countries are operating in proximity for the first time on a celestial body? What if our nominal operations, heaven forbid, anomalous operations, what if they're dangerous to each other? What if the ejector from the moon, blinds a landing mission? So what are some of the policy issues we need to resolve so we can all be on the moon at the same time? So we wrote a report on that and laid out some options. So that's the kind of work I do at NASA, and I'm super excited about being here.
That is truly exciting, and clearly a lot of groundbreaking, first of a kind type policy and activity that you're right in the middle of. What makes you so excited about the South Pole, and why is NASA going there?
A great question. South Pole is where, sorry, I have a bit of a cold. South Pole is where we believe there is ice water. And in space, water is the gold. If we have water, we have oxygen. Well, we have water to drink for humans. We have oxygen. We have hydrogen, which is a propellant, and oxygen, which is also, in combination with hydrogen, enabling us. It will enable us to go deeper into space. So that is the one huge coveted resource that we believe is on the lunar South Pole, and NASA actually has a robotic mission going to the South Pole in the next year or so. And the idea, it's this mission called the Viper. The idea is that it will be looking for water.
That's wonderful. You talk about in prior talks where I've heard you speak and others have as well, you've talked about space junk or space debris. And there's a topic on that today, later on one of the panels. And why is it important? Can you share with the audience a little bit about what's on your mind there? Why is it important? And how do we manage all of this? As you said, there's not a whole lot of policy or agreement yet. And a lot of this is still in discussion. Explain for those that aren't so familiar with all that's going on here.
Right. So just, starting from the top, space debris or space junk is any human-made object in orbit around Earth that no longer serves any useful purpose. And turns out we have millions of pieces of debris in space, from millimeter-sized flecks of paint to rocket bodies that weigh thousands of kilograms. Now, a tiny piece of scrap metal might not sound like a huge threat, but you need to understand how fast things are moving in orbit. This debris is racing around Earth at 17,000 miles per hour and has an impact speed more than 10 times that of a blip. So baseball-sized objects, and we have more than 30,000 of them, can take a satellite out. And as you know, our society is increasingly dependent on satellites in space. And they support our critical infrastructure, whether it's communications, national security, financial transactions, transportation, weather prediction. We wouldn't know about hurricanes if we didn't have satellites in space. And climate monitoring. We wouldn't even know that there is such a thing as global warming if we didn't have all of these satellites giving us all the data. So if any of this debris collides with our satellites, it really may bring our nation to a standstill, and that's not a good thing. And then there's, of course, the challenge also of the space junk re-entering Earth. This past January, a retired NASA satellite weighing 2,500 kilograms re-entered the Earth's atmosphere. I mean, luckily, Earth is mostly water, so it didn't hit anybody. Earlier, a Chinese rocket had re-entered in an uncontrolled manner. But we may not always be so lucky. Probabilities, may catch up. So that's kind of the space debris challenge that is increasingly getting worse, and we need to start to think about it more carefully.
Yeah, and I imagine with the thousands and thousands of satellites that continue to launch month to month, we're going to have more and more satellites that become disabled or inoperable, and that becomes a challenge as well. So what's NASA thinking about with all this potential debris and junk that continues to build? What are some of the possible solutions?
Another great question. So there is kind of 3 ways to address the debris challenge. And starting from the top, we can reduce reduce the amount we put in space, right? We can improve the tracking and characterization, which means if we know where it is, we can maneuver around it, we can avoid it. Right now, we don't even really know where all the debris is. And the third piece is we can remove it or move it, right? The remediation is both moving and removing. Most of what we've done so far is options 1 and 2. We try to design spacecraft that they don't create more debris. We try very hard to have sensors both on the ground and in space, so we know where everything is. But the world hasn't really expended enough effort in remediation. We need to move things out of orbit. And I think some of the things that NASA, and the fact that we focus on the first 2 things actually makes sense. There's a saying that is an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure, right? So here's the analogy. We won't need drugs to cure diabetes if we exercised enough and ate right. But no matter how hard we try, people will continue to get diabetes and other preventable diseases, right? At some point, spending more money on prevention may not be as effective as just curing the people who are sick. We can't just say, hey, sorry, shouldn't have got sick. So, we recognize that we need to both focus on not getting sick, as in, not creating debris, but also cure, as in removing debris. So we need to have a more balanced portfolio. We need to invest in remediation as well. And this is an area NASA is starting to pay more attention to. And I'm thrilled to say that my office has a role in it.
That's outstanding. Why don't we pivot a second? You talked about satellites, and tied to that are mega constellations. Can you talk about what is a mega constellation? Why is it important? And these are causing some challenges for us too. Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So mega constellation is basically a term for groups of large satellites launched by an operator that work together to provide a useful service, such as high-speed internet from space. And there's private companies like SpaceX, which is US-based, and OneWeb, which is UK-based. And these companies, and there's many more, including companies in China, are leading this transformation. As of actually just this week, just between SpaceX and OneWeb, there are more than 4,500 satellites between them. Interesting fun fact: we have doubled the number of satellites in space in the 10 years between 2010 and 2020. So this is just a really fast-moving activity, and things are about to get much worse. According to the International Telecommunications Union, ITU, there are going to be over 430,000 satellites that may be launched in the coming years. And as you can tell, that's a lot of satellites. And I mean, obviously, there's good things, right? They're providing a service. Internet is useful. It's important. I mean, we heard about how SpaceX is able to provide internet in Ukraine. We need internet in developing countries. All good. However, it comes with a downside, and one downside is, when these satellites fail, and some percent will, as always, they will turn into debris, and we need to worry about their remediation. There's actually another downside as well. We have ground-based astronomy, right? We have astronomers, both scientists, but also citizen astronomers who are looking at space through their telescopes. Well, when we have so many satellites, the light from the satellites interferes with observations. So we need to find a balance. I don't think we can take back progress, but we can maybe do other things to make sure that we are not disrupting other activities. And those are some of the things that NASA and the federal government are working hard to work through the challenges together with these private partners.
That's fascinating. You mentioned 430,000, almost half a million satellites will be in the sky, with not a whole lot of set of rules around how they play together and how to deal with them when they become inoperable or have challenges. So any thoughts around what we should be doing there or thinking about as they continue to proliferate?
Right. So I mentioned one thing already. We need to work with these companies to make sure that they, for example, put special kinds of paints and coatings so there is less reflectivity. The other thing we need to work on, and actually that's a really important policy issue, is right now no government agency has what is called on-orbit authority or on-orbit supervision and continuing supervision. And so there's no way for the government to tell entities what they can do in space. This violates, if we are not able to do that, we may be in violation of the Outer Space Treaty, which is something we are a signatory to. So we really do need this on-orbit authority and continuing supervision in place. And the White House, actually the National Space Council, together with NASA and other federal agencies are working on addressing this issue.
You talk about what we're doing. What are we not doing, and why aren't we doing it that we should be?
Yeah, so Sam, another great question. I think I mentioned earlier, we are not investing enough in remediation. We need to be thinking a lot more about taking things out. And again, like I said, cure is more expensive than prevention, right? So it will be more expensive for us to take things out than to work harder to put less debris up, but it's got to get done. There, we don't have a way around it. So that's kind of one thing we absolutely need to do. And we are starting to. And Congress is very supportive. They actually just came out with a new bill called the Orbits Act, which is trying to get NASA to think more about how we will address the problem of orbital debris. So there is effort, there is interest. We just need to kind of figure out the things that need to get done.
Interesting. Yeah, it seems like this is a huge national security issue as well as a worldwide security issue for every nation. And what are some of the things that many people or even experts don't understand about this debris challenge? I know you have some deep insights there.
Yeah, Sam, you're just full of good questions. So at the start of our chat, I kind of talked about how many pieces of debris there are, right? So there is 30,000 pieces of debris that are as big as, where's the baseball? Here, my magic 8-ball, that are about this big. And hundreds of millions of things that are millimeter sized, right? And so whenever people talk about debris, they're mostly talking about reducing the numbers. And that's fine. But our goal isn't just to reduce numbers. Our goal is to reduce the risk. And if you only focus on the proxy, sometimes you may not do the right thing. So for example, on a highway, our goal isn't necessarily to reduce the number of cars, although that would be nice too. Our goal is to reduce loss of life and property. Once we reframe the problem as reducing loss of life and property, we have access to a much larger and potentially cheaper toolkit of solutions than just reducing the number of cars, which, as you know, is very difficult. We can make cars safer through design of impact absorbing bumpers, seat belts, airbags, proximity sensors, all those for the mitigation bucket, right? We can use stop signs, traffic lights, bike lanes, GPS to understand and manage the flow of traffic, which is the tracking and characterization part of the bucket. We can also invest in ambulances, tow trucks, and cleanup crews, which falls on the remediation side of the bucket. So the thing that I would like, that NASA would like the world to kind of better think about is, it isn't just about reducing the number of debris, it's about reducing the risk. And risk can be measured in terms of dollars, which is, again, a switch in framing that we want to bring forward to the world.
Managing the chaos, not a trivial challenge. We have literally thousands of people, both in person and online, for our South by Southwest conference. Any final words for our audience?
One, I hope all of you are excited about what NASA does. I'm wearing my James Webb earrings. We have a telescope 1 million miles away.
Very
where
cool.
We are practically looking at the origin of the universe. We have a rover on Mars, and we are using tubes like this to collect dirt, which we will bring back so we can analyze, and maybe we will find signs of ancient life. So one of the things I would like the South by Southwest audience to do is to stay abreast of all the cool things NASA does, and come be part of it. So later this year, we are going to be having a spacecraft come back from an asteroid and bring back dirt. I think it would be really good to know what's in it. So come back and tell us what you think about it. And I guess one other thing I would say is, returning to our topic of space debris, is that we have just recently come out with a report on this reframing I talked about. So I hope folks will come, and we are releasing the report this Friday. So I hope folks will come and read the report.
Well, this is great. Dr. Lal, I want to thank you personally for all your leadership and vision that you bring to NASA and to our worldwide space community. Myself and my Deloitte colleagues love working with NASA, and certainly our South by Southwest attendees are very appreciative of your time today. So thank you.
It's such an awesome time to be with you, Sam, and I'm looking forward to continued discussion and interactions.
Fantastic. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone.